We've been told over and over again that no contact is the most powerful move after a breakup or when a man pulls away. That if you vanish, he'll miss you. That silence will somehow make him realize your worth. But here's the truth no one tells you. Silence without evolution is just waiting. And waiting isn't power. You can go no contact and still be emotionally chained to him, still checking his social media, still hoping for a message that never comes. That's not strength, that's still begging, just silently. Real strength, real power, it's when your world stops revolving around his, when you don't just disappear. You rise, you expand, you glow differently. You shift so deeply within yourself that he starts to feel your absence, not just in texts, but in energy. You're not punishing him with silence, you're showing him what peace looks like without him. And that realization that you've detached, moved on, and become something beyond his reach, that's what makes him crumble. This speech is not about ghosting or games. It's about real inner transformation, about understanding that your power isn't in silence, it's in the shift that happens when you no longer need to be heard, because you finally started listening to yourself. No contact has been glorified as the ultimate form of power after a heartbreak or disappointment, but the truth is, it's often misunderstood. People think that if they stop talking to someone, block them, or vanish from their lives, they are taking back control. They believe that silence will create a sense of loss and mystery that will draw the other person back. But what many fail to realize is that silence on its own does nothing if your heart and mind are still tied to that person, if you are still emotionally hooked, still obsessing, still hoping for a message. Then the silence is not strength, it's just suppression. You're not moving on, you're holding your breath and calling it healing. The power of no contact doesn't lie in the silence, it lies in the emotional detachment that happens when you stop investing your energy into someone who isn't investing in you. If you stop talking to him, but still think about him all day, check his online status, reread old messages, and stalk his social media, then you're not in control. Your emotions still are. You're using silence as a mask, but the truth is, underneath it all, you're still waiting for him to notice, waiting for him to reach out, waiting for the silence to create a reaction. And in that waiting, you've given your power away. What makes someone truly miss you isn't your absence, it's your transformation. It's when they can sense through your energy, your behavior, your life, that you have genuinely moved on. When you stop feeding the invisible emotional cord that connects you to them. When you're no longer trying to prove your worth through punishment or presence. When your attention, your love, your care is redirected inward, is when the shift happens. Because the human mind is wired to value what it can't have. Not what disappears, but what evolves beyond reach. When you emotionally move on, your vibe changes. You stop chasing closure because you realize the only closure you need is your peace. You stop wondering what they're doing because you're too busy living your own life. You stop hoping they'll come back because you've outgrown needing someone who made you question your worth in the first place. And that emotional energy, that sense of wholeness, is what people feel, even when you're not saying a word. There's something incredibly powerful about a person who no longer needs to be chosen. Someone who has stopped fighting for attention and started fighting for themselves. When your happiness is no longer tied to whether or not he notices you're gone, You become magnetic in a different way, not in a way that begs or lingers. And when someone who used to take your love for granted senses that they've lost access to the old version of you, the version that waited, longed, overgave, they feel it deep. Because suddenly, they're not missing your messages, they're missing your essence. And that can't be replaced or ignored. Most people confuse silence with healing. But silence without inner work is just avoidance. It's easy to delete a number, it's easy to unfollow, but if in your mind you're still replaying every memory, still clinging to hope, still fantasizing about what could have been, then you're not free. You're still emotionally investing in someone who isn't investing in you. And that emotional investment is what keeps you stuck. That's what keeps you in pain. Healing is not about vanishing. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you gave away, trying to be enough for someone who couldn't see your value. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop allowing their choices to define your self-worth. It means you stop interpreting their silence as rejection and start seeing it as redirection. It means you choose your peace over your pride. You let go, not because you're trying to make a point, but because you finally realized you don't have to beg for love. You don't have to chase respect, and you don't have to keep yourself emotionally hostage in the hope that someone will finally see what you were always offering. No contact should not be about hurting them. It should be about healing you. It's not a weapon, it's a boundary. And boundaries don't work if you're constantly checking to see if they've noticed. The real magic happens when you shift your focus from "will he miss me" to "how can I rebuild me?" Because when you redirect that energy back into your own growth, your passions, your joy, your confidence, you stop needing them to complete you. You become whole. And that wholeness is what creates gravity. That's what pulls people in. Not silence, but the silent transformation of someone who no longer needs to be chosen in order to feel worthy. So if you're going no contact, don't just go quiet. Go inward. Look at where your energy is still entangled with someone who doesn't show up for you. Ask yourself where you're still hoping, still waiting, still living in the past, and then start pulling that energy back. Not in a vengeful way, not in a way that's meant to hurt or prove anything, but in a way that says, I choose me now. Because once you choose you fully, deeply, unapologetically, there's no contact necessary. The message has already been sent through your actions, your growth, your peace. And believe me, that is louder than any silence ever could be. Indifference has a power that silence alone can never replicate. When someone pulls away from you, your first instinct might be to disappear, to stop talking, to vanish in hopes that they'll notice and come crawling back. But what truly shakes someone, what really unsettles them, isn't your absence, it's your indifference. Because people expect silence to be a phase. They assume you're still hurting, waiting, hoping, somewhere in the shadows. But when you show them that their absence hasn't shaken your peace, that you are not waiting, not wounded, not longing, that's when the shift hits them hard. That's when they feel the loss on a deeper level. There's a subtle difference between going no contact and becoming indifferent. No contact can still come from a place of emotional intensity. You might be quiet on the outside, but if you're still emotionally invested, still hoping they'll text, still watching their every move, then that silence isn't calm, it's tension. It's like holding your breath and calling it healing. But indifference? Indifference is breathing freely without them. It's when you're no longer angry, no longer obsessed, no longer hoping they'll change. You're simply done. And not in a dramatic way. In a quiet, certain, peaceful way. That's what people don't expect. They expect emotion. They expect you to lash out, beg, argue, or sulk. When you don't give them any of that, when your energy becomes still and self-seeked, it disturbs their sense of control. Because the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. Hate still means you care. Anger still means you're reacting. But indifference, that says you no longer matter enough to affect me. And that is one of the most powerful emotional positions you can stand in. You can't fake indifference. You can't pretend to be unbothered if you're secretly hoping for their attention. The truth always reveals itself in energy. If you're still checking his social media, still trying to make him jealous, still feeling triggered by his actions, then you haven't reached that place of peace. But when you truly let go, when you've healed to the point where their choices no longer impact your joy or your worth, that calm becomes your armor. It protects you, it speaks for you, and it changes the dynamic entirely. He might have expected your silence to be temporary. He might have assumed you'd come back eventually, or that he could return on his own timeline. But when he sees that you're not just gone, you're over it, that you're showing up to your own life fully present, fully vibrant, fully focused on your future, it's a reality he's not prepared for. Because that's when it sinks in. He doesn't have access to you anymore. Not your body, not your mind, not your soul. That's when the weight of his choices hits. Not because you yelled, not because you blocked him, but because you stopped needing him to notice you. Indifference isn't cold, it's clarity. It's knowing what you deserve and no longer accepting less. It's looking at what once kept you awake at night and realizing it no longer deserves a place in your heart. It's waking up and not thinking of him first thing. It's hearing his name and feeling nothing but neutrality. That emotional neutrality is where your power lives. That's where you stop being his emotional safety net, his backup plan, his source of validation. When you reach the point of indifference, you no longer need closure because you've given it to yourself. You no longer need revenge because you're too busy building a life that fulfills you. You no longer feel anxious about whether he's thinking of you because you're too focused on loving yourself better than anyone else ever could. That detachment isn't bitter, it's beautiful. It means you've healed, and healing doesn't scream, it glows. He will feel it when you're no longer energetically connected to him, when your aura no longer reaches toward him, when the emotional strings have been cut, not out of hate, but out of respect for yourself. That shift is unsettling, it's confusing, because most people rely on your continued care, your consistent reactions, your emotional investment, even after the relationship ends. But when all of that is gone, when you've reclaimed your emotional real estate, he will notice, not because you forced it, but because peace is louder than pain when it comes from self-worth. You don't need to post subliminal messages, flaunt your glow up, or try to get his attention indirectly. The goal isn't to make him regret losing you. The goal is to no longer care whether he does. When you reach that point, you'll realize how much of your energy was wasted on someone who didn't value you. And now that you've redirected that energy back into yourself, you're glowing with something he can't replicate or replace. Emotional independence. Let your indifference be the echo of your healing. Let your calm be the response he never expected. Let your stillness be the sign that you're no longer in a place of emotional debt. And if he comes back, if he texts, calls, reaches out, don't do it for validation. Don't go back to prove a point. Ask yourself, do I even want this anymore? Or did I just want? Because once you taste the peace that comes from no longer needing someone to choose you, you'll never again settle for being tolerated. True power isn't in disappearing, it's in evolving. It's in living fully and freely with or without him. So let your silence come from strength, not strategy. Let your indifference be the final word. The one that says, I've outgrown needing anything from you. That's not weakness. That's not silence. That's peace. And peace is what he never expected you to find without him. When someone pulls away or disappears from your life, the most natural instinct is to wonder why. You replay conversations, analyze moments, and try to figure out what you did wrong. You might wait by your phone, hope for a message, stalk their social media for clues, but in doing all of that, you're making one silent, dangerous mistake. You're still giving them your energy. You're allowing someone who walked away to remain the center of your world, and that's where you lose yourself. That's where healing becomes delayed. Because instead of using that time to rebuild and rediscover who you are, you're unknowingly handing your power back to them. What if instead you use the silence as a doorway, a chance not just to grieve what was lost, but to reimagine what could be gained through you? The pain of someone leaving you is real, but it can either break you or wake you. And if you let it wake you, if you decide that this chapter will be the start of your personal expansion, then the very thing that hurts you becomes the thing that births a stronger, deeper, more confident version of you. The truth is, focusing on what he's thinking, what he's doing, or whether he's missing you keeps you trapped. It locks you into a pattern where your worth is still attached to his opinion. That's not healing, that's limbo. And no one becomes their best self in limbo. Real healing happens when you shift your attention away from him and place it back where it belongs, on you, your growth, your peace, your goals, your joy. Every second you spend wondering about him is a second you've lost investing in your own evolution. Reclaiming your power doesn't mean becoming bitter. It means becoming better. Better for yourself, better in your boundaries, better in how you love, how you dream, how you show up in your life. You don't need him to regret losing you. What you need is to become someone so fulfilled, so emotionally nourished, that his absence no longer feels like a loss. Because what hurts isn't really the loss of him. It's the loss of the idea you had about him, the dreams you attached to him, the potential that never became reality. When you stop focusing on what he's doing and start focusing on how you're growing, something shifts in you. Your energy changes. You move differently. You start caring more about your peace than your pride. You begin showing up for yourself in ways you were waiting for someone else to do. You take yourself on dates. You pour love into your friendships. You chase passions you put on hold. You learn to enjoy your own company, not because you've given up on love, but because you've finally fallen in love with you. The most powerful kind of revenge isn't making him jealous. It's becoming the version of yourself that doesn't even care if he notices. When your days are full of purpose, when your face lights up from laughter that has nothing to do with him, when you stop needing someone to validate your worth, that's when you become unforgettable. Expansion doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you use the pain to fuel something beautiful. You take all that emotion and channel it into building something new. A business, a body, a mindset, a lifestyle. You rise, not to prove anything to him, but to prove everything to yourself. You remind yourself of your resilience. You remember your power. And with every small decision to grow, to heal, to evolve, you take back the parts of yourself that you gave away trying to be enough for someone else. When a man sees that you're no longer orbiting his world, that you've become the son of your own, it hits differently. Because people can feel when you've shifted. He may not say it, but he'll sense it. In the way you no longer reach out, in the way you don't react, in the way your life starts to glow with new energy. You don't have to announce your growth. It speaks for itself. And the more you elevate, the smaller he begins to feel in your story. The real transformation happens not when he comes back, but when you no longer care if he does. When you stop asking, will he realize what he lost? And start asking, what can I now create with everything I've gained? That mindset is what separates those who heal from those who stay stuck. That's what turns heartbreak into rebirth. You were never meant to stay small for someone else's comfort. You were never meant to shrink yourself to keep a love that didn't see your full value. If he walked away, let him. Let that exit be your entrance into something far greater, into a deeper relationship with yourself, into a life that feels rich, full, and grounded. Not because someone else filled the void, but because you stop looking outward for what you were always capable of giving yourself. So when the silence grows loud, don't waste it on waiting. Use it to rebuild, use it to rise, use it to expand into the woman you were always meant to be, the one who doesn't just survive heartbreak but thrives through it, the one who no longer begs to be seen because she finally sees herself, the one who stopped focusing on what she lost and started building a life too beautiful to walk away from again. Closure is often seen as something we need from another person, an apology, an explanation, a final conversation. But the reality is, most of the time, the person who hurt you is not capable of giving you the kind of closure you truly seek. Either they won't give it, or even if they do, it won't bring the peace you hoped it would. Why? Because closure doesn't come from their words. It comes from your accept. The real healing begins when you stop chasing answers and start choosing peace. When you decide that you don't need someone else to validate your pain in order to move forward with your life. The truth is, the closure you want isn't really about understanding what went wrong. It's about wanting to make sense of why someone you cared about didn't choose you, respect you, or love you the way you deserved. It's about wanting to make their actions mean something that gives you clarity. But their inability to love you properly is not a puzzle you're supposed to solve. It's a boundary you're supposed to set. When someone shows you who they are through their actions, that's all the information you need. That's your closure, right there. Not in what they say after disappearing, not in the reasons they give, but in the way they treated you when it mattered. You don't need to wait for someone to tell you why they didn't love you right. You already felt it in the way they neglected you. You already heard it in the silence that followed your vulnerability. You already saw it in the distance they created after promising closeness. When someone's actions are loud enough, you don't need their words to understand. Seeking closure from them only keeps you emotionally attached. It's like reopening a wound and expecting it to heal. True healing begins when you realize that you can give yourself the permission to let go. You can close the chapter not because it's resolved, but because you deserve peace more than you deserve answers. There's freedom in saying, I may never understand why he did what he did, but I accept that it wasn't about me. Because most of the time, it isn't. People treat others based on their own wounds, their own immaturity, their own emotional limitations. Maybe he couldn't give you love because he never learned how to love. Maybe he pulled away because commitment triggered his fears. Maybe he ran because your depth scared him. None of that is yours to carry. It might explain his behavior, but it doesn't excuse the pain it caused. And your healing isn't dependent on understanding his damage. It's rooted in recognizing your worth, despite how he failed to see it. When you stop looking for closure from him, and instead focus on closure within you, everything changes. You stop rereading old messages. You stop waiting for that apology. You stop wondering what you could have done differently. Because you begin to understand that the love you gave was not wasted. It was just misplaced. And now your job isn't to punish yourself for loving. It's to learn from it, to grow from it, to become more selective, not more closed off, to protect your heart without hardening it. That's how you move forward, not by forgetting the past, but by refusing to let it define your future. Closure from within is when you sit with the pain, process the emotions, and still choose to heal. It's when you wake up and decide, I'm not going to let this experience rob me of another day of joy, peace, or possibility. It's when you take back your power and realize that forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. Because you deserve to be free of bitterness, free of overthinking, free of the heaviness that keeps you emotionally tied to someone who's no longer part of your life. There's something incredibly powerful about a woman who closes her own door, who doesn't need a final word or a dramatic goodbye to walk away. She simply recognizes that her peace is more important than prolonged confusion, that her energy is too valuable to waste on someone who never knew what to do with it in the first place. That kind of woman doesn't wait for closure, she becomes it. She becomes the end of the story. Not because she was given an explanation, but because she gave herself a conclusion. And don't think for a second that this strength goes unnoticed. He will feel it. He will notice when you stop reaching out, not in silence, but in detachment. He will sense the shift when you no longer seek his attention, his apology, or his affection. Not because you've moved on out of spite, but because you've moved on with grace. Because you chose to honor yourself more than the need for clarity from someone who couldn't provide it. Closure isn't a door someone else shuts for you. It's the moment you decide that your healing is no longer in their hands. It's the day you stop waiting and start living. It's the deep breath you take when you finally release the version of yourself that loved someone who couldn't love you back. You don't need their sorry to feel whole. You just need your own commitment to never abandon yourself the way they did. That is how you heal. That is how you rise. That is how you take your story back and write an ending that has nothing to do with them and everything to do with you.